They say silence is the loudest scream, but in Eleanor's case it was the calm before the storm. Watch closely. The woman walking out of that courtroom isn't just defeated, she's being erased. Stripped of her dignity, her money, and the legacy her father built, she looks broken. Her ex-husband thinks he's won. He thinks she's gone forever. But he forgot one thing: when you hit rock bottom, the only foundation left is solid enough to build an empire. You are about to witness the most satisfying revenge in history. She didn't just come back. She came back with the one man even the devil fears. This is the story of how Eleanor returned, and why she didn't have to say a single word to destroy them. The sound of the gavel striking the mahogany block didn't sound like justice. It sounded like a bone snapping. Order. Judgment is ruled in favor of the plaintiff Martin Hart. Judge Harrison announced, his voice devoid of sympathy. The court finds that Mrs. Hart's claims to the intellectual property of Hart & Co. are unsubstantiated due to the prenuptial agreement and the evidence presented regarding her mental instability. Full ownership of the patent, the estate, and the primary accounts is granted to Mr. Hart. Spousal support is denied. Eleanor stood there, her hands trembling so violently she had to clasp them together to hide the vibration. The air in the courtroom felt thin, recycled, and suffocating. She looked at the man sitting at the opposing table. Martin. The man she had loved since college. The man she had nursed through bankruptcy 3 years ago. The man whose revolutionary tech idea was actually written in her handwriting in a notebook currently sitting in his safe. Martin didn't look at her. He was too busy smiling at his lawyer, Vanessa Cole. Vanessa, with her sharp features and even sharper predatory instincts, placed a hand on Martin's forearm. It was a gesture that was too intimate for a courtroom, a subtle twist of the knife. They weren't just attorney and client. Eleanor knew that now. They were partners in the grandest theft of her life. Ms. Hart. The bailiff's voice was gentle, a stark contrast to the brutality of the verdict. You need to clear the table. Eleanor blinked, the fluorescent light stinging her dry eyes. She hadn't slept in 3 days. Yes, she whispered. Yes, of course. She packed her notebook empty because her lawyer, a court-appointed novice named Timothy, who stuttered when he was nervous, hadn't let her speak. Timothy was currently stuffing papers into his briefcase, refusing to make eye contact with her. He knew he had been outmatched. He knew this was a slaughter. As Eleanor walked toward the heavy oak doors, the silence in the room was heavy. It was the kind of silence that follows a public execution. People were watching not with pity, but with that morbid curiosity reserved for car crashes. "Eleanor," a voice called out just as she reached the aisle. She froze. She turned slowly. Martin was standing there, buttoning his $3,000 suit jacket, a suit she had bought him for his birthday. He walked over, Vanessa trailing a step behind him like a sleek, venomous shadow. "I tried to offer you a settlement," Martin said, his voice low-pitched to sound reasonable to any onlookers. "I offered you the condo in Jersey. You got greedy, Elle. You tried to claim my company." "It's my code, Martin," Eleanor said, her voice raspy. "You know it. I wrote the algorithm on our kitchen table while you were playing golf." Martin chuckled, shaking his head. "And yet here we are. The judge thinks you're delusional. Maybe you should get that checked out. Stress can do crazy things to a woman of your age." Eleanor was 29. Vanessa stepped forward, her red lips curving into a smirk. "Don't worry, Eleanor. We'll give you 24 hours to vacate the house. We're not monsters, but leave the jewelry. Martin bought those with company funds, which makes them company assets." It was a lie. The necklace she wore, a simple gold locket, was from her late mother. But Eleanor didn't fight. She didn't scream. She looked at Martin, really looked at him, and realized the man she loved had never existed. He was a mirror reflecting what he needed to be to get what he wanted. She turned around and pushed the doors open. Reporters were waiting outside, but they weren't there for her. They were there for Martin Hart, the new tech king of New York. As the flashbulbs erupted behind her, capturing Martin's victory smile, Eleanor walked down the marble steps. It started to rain. A cold gray drizzle that soaked her cheap blouse instantly. She had no umbrella. She had no car. Martin had canceled the lease remotely this morning. She had $11 in her bank account and a maxed-out credit card. She walked in silence. The city noise swallowed her whole. She didn't cry. Tears were for people who had hope left to lose. Eleanor Hart had nothing. Or so she thought. 6 months later. The clatter of silverware on porcelain was the soundtrack of Eleanor's new life. Table 4 needs water and Table 7 is asking for the sommelier again. Don't make them wait, Elle. On it, Marco, Eleanor said, wiping her hands on her apron. She wasn't Eleanor Hart anymore. Here at L'Ombre, one of Manhattan's most exclusive and dimly lit underground supper clubs, she was just Elle. She was invisible. The uniform black trousers, crisp white shirt, black vest was designed to make the staff blend into the shadows. It was the perfect place to hide. L'Ombre was where the city's elite came to make deals they didn't want the SEC or their spouses to know about. The lighting was low. The booths were high-backed velvet cages, and the privacy policy was stricter than the Pentagon's. Eleanor worked hard. She was efficient, silent, and possessed a memory that terrified the other staff. She remembered every regular's drink order, their allergies, and inadvertently the secrets they whispered when they thought no one was listening. VIP section is opening up tonight, Marco, the floor manager, hissed as he passed her. The owner is nervous. Big shot coming in, someone who never goes out. Who? Eleanor asked, stacking menus. Jacob Thorne. Eleanor paused. Even in her old life, the name Jacob Thorne was a myth. He was the billionaire recluse, the heir to the Thorne dynasty shipping tech pharmaceuticals. They called him the Iron Ghost. He hadn't been photographed in public in 5 years, ever since a tragic accident that allegedly left him scarred and bitter. He ran his empire from a fortress in the Catskills. I thought he was a hermit, Eleanor muttered. Apparently he's coming out of hibernation to acquire a new tech firm, Marco whispered, checking his reflection in a spoon. He's taking Table 1, the private alcove. You're serving him. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Me. Why me give it to Jessica? She loves the high rollers. Jessica spills things when she gets nervous. You don't. You're a robot. Just pour the wine, keep your head down, and don't look him in the eye. Rumor has it he fires people just for staring. Great. Just what she needed. Another egomaniacal man with too much money. At 9:00 p.m. the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. The air grew tense. The heavy velvet curtains at the entrance parted and a phalanx of security guards entered first. They scanned the room, speaking into earpieces. Yo. Then he entered. Jacob Thorne was tall, imposingly so. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him with architectural precision. But it was his aura that commanded attention. It was cold, detached. He walked with a slight limp, relying on a black cane with a silver handle shaped like a wolf's head. He didn't look scarred, not in the way the tabloids suggested. He was devastatingly handsome, with sharp cheekbones and hair the color of midnight, but his eyes were hidden behind tinted glasses even in the dim restaurant. He moved straight to Table 1. He sat alone. Eleanor took a deep breath, smoothed her apron, and approached with the wine list and water. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice steady. "Still or sparkling?" "Sparkling," he said. His voice was a low baritone, rough like gravel over velvet. He didn't look up from the tablet he was holding. She poured the water with practiced ease. "Would you like to see the wine list, or shall I fetch the sommelier?" "I'm waiting for a guest," Jacob said dismissively. "Bring a bottle of the 82 Petrus, and leave the glass." "Very well." Eleanor retreated. She went to the bar, retrieved the expensive vintage, and returned. As she decanted the wine, she couldn't help but glance at the tablet screen Jacob had left open on the table while he checked his watch. It was a contract, a merger agreement, and the name at the top of the document made Eleanor's blood freeze. Acquisition of Hart & Company proprietary algorithm. Her hand shook. Just a fraction. A drop of red wine missed the glass and landed on the pristine white tablecloth, a crimson stain blooming like a bullet wound. Jacob Thorne stopped checking his watch. He slowly turned his head toward the stain, then up to Eleanor. "I thought you were competent," he said. The temperature in the booth dropped 10 degrees. "I apologize, sir," Eleanor said quickly, dabbing it with a cloth. "I will replace the linen immediately." "It's not the linen I care about," Jacob said, taking off his tinted glasses. His eyes were a piercing, unnatural shade of icy blue. "It's the distraction. My guest will be here in 2 minutes, and I do not want a clumsy waitress hovering over a deal worth $500 million. "It won't happen again," Eleanor said, her voice tight. She saw the name on the contract again. Martin Hart. Martin was selling her code to Jacob Thorne. He was cashing out. If Jacob signed that, Martin would be set for life and the proof of Eleanor's work would be buried in a conglomerate forever. She had to say something. She had nothing to lose. "You shouldn't sign that," she said. The silence that followed was deafening. Jacob stared at her. "Excuse me. The contract," Eleanor said, nodding at the tablet. "Hart & Co., the algorithm regarding the predictive behavioral modeling. It's flawed." Jacob turned his body fully toward her. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was dangerously curious. And what would a waitress at a supper club know about predictive behavioral algorithms? "I know that on page 40 of the technical addendum, the recursive loop for the dataset is missing a termination command," Eleanor said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "If you run that code on a server as large as yours, it won't just fail. It will create a cascading data leak. It will expose your entire user database within 48 hours. Jacob looked at her, really looked at her. He looked at her worn hands, her cheap uniform, her tired eyes. Then he looked down at the tablet. He tapped the screen, scrolling rapidly to page 40. He read the lines of code. He paused. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm just the waitress who spilled the wine," Eleanor said, pulling back. "I'll get the linen." "Wait," Jacob commanded. It wasn't a request. At that moment, the front curtains parted again. "Jacob, my apologies for the delay." Eleanor's spine stiffened. She knew that voice. It was the voice that haunted her nightmares. Martin walked toward the booth, beaming, looking richer and more arrogant than ever. Vanessa was on his arm. Eleanor turned her back instantly, trying to shrink into the shadows. "Leave the bottle," Jacob said to her, his eyes still fixed on her back. "And stay close." Martin slid into the booth opposite Jacob. "Mr. Thorne, an honor. Truly. I trust you've had a chance to look over the final draft. It's a goldmine." Jacob didn't look at Martin. He was watching Eleanor, who was standing in the shadows against the wall, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "It is certainly interesting," Jacob said slowly. "But before we sign, I have a question about the termination command in the recursive loop." Martin blinked. His smile faltered. What? "The code," Jacob said, his eyes narrowing. "Explain the safety parameters of the loop to me, Mr. Hart, since you wrote it." Martin laughed nervously. "Well, that's technical jargon, Jacob. I have my CTO handle the weeds. I'm the visionary." "The visionary?" Jacob repeated. He leaned forward. "A visionary who doesn't know that his own product is a ticking time bomb." Vanessa interjected, smooth as silk. "Mr. Thorne, surely we can discuss the technicalities after the letter of intent is signed. The valuation." "The valuation is 0 if the product is broken," Jacob snapped. He looked past Martin directly into the shadows. "You, the waitress. Come here." Eleanor froze. Martin turned around. "Excuse me?" Martin asked, confused. "The waitress." Eleanor stepped into the light. She kept her chin up. If she was going to die, she'd die standing. Martin's jaw dropped. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. Vanessa actually gasped. "Eleanor," Martin whispered. "Hello, Martin," Eleanor said coldly. Jacob looked between them. The shock on Martin's face told him everything he needed to know. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. The brilliance of the waitress. The fear of the visionary. Jacob leaned back in his seat, a slow, terrifying smile